Hey guys, we have an absolutely awesome video here today from Wrestlelamia. They're a wonderful wrestling commentary page. Check them out, sub to them. This is 10 wrestlers that WWE buried. It's a topic I'm interested in, so that's what we're covering today.
I don't want you to win.
10 wrestlers WWE resented for getting popular on their own. Number 10, Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder deserves all the credit in the world for breaking the mold when it came to being a pro wrestler. Ryder was one of the first wrestlers to use his online presence to make a name for himself, and he truly set the template on how to use social media to create a likable character that could be translated to television. When Ryder first started his YouTube series, WWE would actively ignore the fact that Ryder was slowly but surely gaining a huge following. This following gradually increased over time, and by late 2011, Ryder was one of the most popular pro wrestlers in the digital space.
You know, I think Zack Ryder was actually a little bit of a victim of being a bit too much of a trailblazer. Very ahead of his time leveraging YouTube, because it was only really just starting to get hugely popular like it is today. And then you had the boomers at the time running WWE, not actually realizing that you can leverage social media for your brand and your business in a very positive way. And honestly, maybe Vince was just a little bit vindictive or spiteful, I guess, and just didn't like the guy. We'll see further in the video what Wrestlelamia thinks, but I remember he was getting over, and then all of a sudden he was in that weird love triangle with John Cena and Eva Torres, I think it was. Completely emasculated, and then I think Kane pushed him down the stairs in a wheelchair or something. It was absolutely dreadful. I felt for the guy. I mean, just like that, rise, fall. But Matt Cardona, many years later is doing great in the Indies, and I'm happy for him. I hope he has one more chance in WWE.
Unfortunately for Ryder and the fans, WWE had no plans to feature him in a meaningful role. He was regularly featured on WWE Superstars, a sign that WWE had zero interest in featuring him on Raw or SmackDown. But due to pressure from fans and no doubt some internal figures within WWE, they would loosely commit to Ryder's push, but the way this was handled was horrendously done. And then WWE would transition to a bizarre storyline which saw Ryder involved in a story with Kane, Eve Torres, and John Cena. Eventually, the crowd just gave up on the idea, as WWE were evidently not going to invest any resources into making Ryder a major player in the company. Number 9, Rusev. Rusev Day at one point in time were arguably the hottest act in WWE, yet in typical WWE fashion, they resented the fact that names they didn't plan on pushing were getting over with the crowd organically. Despite the crowd actively heckling segments and matches with support for Rusev, WWE blatantly ignored it. And according to Road Dogg, who was writing SmackDown at the time, anytime he pitched something with Rusev Day, it was immediately shot down.
Yeah. So obviously Rusev debuted on the main roster as a monster heel, looked like a credible opponent for John Cena, I think back during the whole US Championship Open Challenge run, or maybe it was before. It was around that era. And obviously if you're booking sort of like a foreign heel, it's a little bit of a one-dimensional gimmick. And so Rusev got a little bit lost in the shuffle, started losing a lot of pay-per-view matches. I think he lost for a couple years in a row on pay-per-view or something. And then finally, as things just happened when the stars aligned, the whole Rusev Day thing started to go over. And it looked like, hey, you know what? Rusev might actually get a second chance here. And yeah, Vince just completely buried it before it started. And I know it's a silly little gimmick. And Vince's argument was like, oh, they're just chanting because it's catchy, not because they like you. But you could at least roll with it and see and be self-aware enough to admit, hey, I'm wrong. Maybe the fans are really into you. But Vince was very stubborn on this one, and unfortunately, Rusev paid the price for it.
Yeah, we saw Rusev Day getting over. I honestly don't know what happened to Rusev Day. One day we were pushing it, and the next day we weren't. Honestly, when I say we were pushing it, it didn't go away. It didn't just disappear, we just weren't doing anything with it anymore. Every time I would pitch something, it would get shot down, so I don't know what happened. I'm not going to say anything because last time I said something, I got a phone call. I'm not going to have that happen again. But honestly, I don't know what went down, but all of a sudden we stopped running with it because it was going really well. No doubt Road Dogg is referencing Vince McMahon, as it was widely reported that McMahon wasn't a fan of the gimmick. Number 8, Taz. Taz had the perfect WWE debut. He would debut at the 2000 Royal Rumble by defeating Kurt Angle, and it looked set that Taz was going to be a main event level star in WWE. But unfortunately, this push and strong presentation didn't last at all, as within just a few short weeks, Taz would fall dramatically down the card. Taz was booked to face Big Boss Man at the No Way Out pay-per-view, and logic would indicate that this would be another easy victory for Taz. However, WWE decided to end the match via a DQ. Following this backwards creative move, he would be moved down to the hardcore division, and before fans knew it, he was losing to Crash Holly on television.
Yeah, this was a really weird rise and fall, and probably one of the quickest I've seen, at least of that era anyway. You know, Taz obviously came in, he took on Kurt Angle and beat Kurt Angle technically on debut, although Kurt Angle, I think if I'm not mistaken, was arguing it was via an illegal choke. And so they had that kind of gimmick going on for a while. I think it was rumored that Taz, I don't know if it was his T-bone suplex or one of his other moves, but he's obviously known as the suplex machine, and he had some pretty harsh-looking suplexes, some that could potentially be dangerous. He did come from ECW after all. I don't know if Kurt complained or if Vince saw something on the video and said nope, but apparently they thought he was too dangerous to work with. And also, I think he also had a lot of injuries. He was obviously aging at the time too. But yeah, after the initial debut against Kurt Angle and bringing in the EC title, I thought they were just going to run with him. And then he got relegated pretty quick to the hardcore division. I remember he also was in that really silly feud where he was bullying Jerry the King Lawler. I can't remember if that was King of the Ring or SummerSlam 2000. And after that, he was pretty much on commentary. I guess that was at least a blessing for the fans. I think his commentary announcing with Michael Cole was one of the most underrated pairings ever. But yeah, what could have been, huh?
Taz was immensely popular with the audience, and he was translating well, so there was no reason as to why they shouldn't have kept the push alive. According to the legendary Jim Ross on his podcast, it was complaints from other wrestlers that led to Vince McMahon destroying the push altogether. People thought his suplexes were dangerous, this other stuff. A lot of talents get back to Vince and say, you know, I really don't want to work with this guy. He's dangerous. So they tell me that, but they'd tell Vince that. He heard it enough, and he saw that a lot of the top talents were uncomfortable in stepping in the ring with Taz. He finally took it to heart.
Probably jealous.
Taz's WWE run could have been incredible, but unfortunately, backstage politics played a crucial role in the run not living up to expectations. Number 7, Baron Corbin. The more shocking WWE releases in recent memory came in 2024 when they decided to release Baron Corbin. Whilst Corbin had an up and down WWE tenure, during his final few years in the company, he'd worked endlessly to get better at his craft, and he'd managed to build an organic and consistent rapport with the audience. Corbin had an acclaimed run in NXT alongside Bron Breakker, and when he returned to the main roster, the fans were urging WWE to use him in any capacity. But popularity aside, WWE Creative just had no plans for him, and Corbin's release highlighted that even in the Triple H era, not every organically over wrestler is going to be given the spotlight.
It's a weird one, because for many years, again, this is another guy that they've started on. Let's focus on the positives first. Baron can talk on the mic. He actually knows, he's got the gift of the gab. He knows how to talk. For a big guy, he moves pretty fluid. People forget because he's a little bit leaner just how big he is. He's pretty tall. He's on the taller end of the scale, so he can actually move and put on a good match. My argument is he's a little bit awkward as the bigger fellas are, and sometimes, I don't know. For me, personally, there might be just that it factor missing, but he was a solid worker. He could have been the staple of a mid-card, maybe held a mid-card championship and basically shown what he could do with his experience, maybe bring some young talent up. But it wasn't meant to be. I thought it was going to be a renaissance period when he was with Bron Breakker and NXT. They were doing some great work down there. Yeah, a real shame. I hope he continues doing what he's doing. I think he's around 40 now, so he still has a good few years left. Hopefully he gets another shot in WWE one day. I'm not over myself personally watching Baron Corbin, but he does seem to be the guy that people love to hate.
Number 6, Cesaro. There were rumors for years that Vince McMahon wasn't a fan of Cesaro, and he resented the fact that fans actually loved him. This was all but confirmed when McMahon appeared on Stone Cold's podcast and basically verbally buried the former US champion. McMahon would state that Cesaro had failed to grab the brass ring. McMahon would even declare that Cesaro wasn't a draw, implying that Cesaro could never make him any substantial amount of money. These comments received major backlash from fans, as it was seen as totally unprofessional and had no place on a public platform.
Do you think Cesaro was missing a little something character-wise? With that being said, he did make a lot of effort. You know, he used to do that little spin move that the fans used to get behind, was always consistent, wrestling good matches. Strongest guy apparently in the company, pound for pound. Apparently the guy a total unit in the weight room. His look maybe a little bit lean, I guess, in the sense that I know Vince McMahon's always like those cloud-looking fellas, and Cesaro probably didn't quite have that bigger kind of looking guy. Although compared to smaller guys on the roster these days, he'd fit right at home, looks bigger than them. But yeah, I don't know. I personally think Cesaro was missing a little something. With that being said, not everyone's out to be in the main event. He could have been a perfect mid-card staple for many years to come. But, I mean, it seems to be working out for Claudio elsewhere. So hopefully he continues making money and showing his talents to the world.
Things were never the same for Cesaro after the infamous podcast, as although he was given mini pushes over the years, WWE just never had any genuine plans for the Swiss Superman. Number 5. Christian. It's been well established over the years that Vince McMahon had a personal issue with Christian. When Christian was insanely popular in 2004 to 2005, McMahon outright refused to make him world champion, despite the audience and no doubt his peers wanting him in the prestigious role. Christian would even leave WWE in 2005, and amazingly, he would go to TNA and overnight become an established main eventer, a position he would be embedded in until his last day in the company. According to Jim Ross on his podcast, McMahon's resentment towards Christian was focused on his physique.
Yeah, apparently Vince McMahon thought Christian looked ugly. How silly is that, right? But no, I loved Christian. I was really into Christian from the 5-second pose era when he used to tag up with Edge. And then when he went out on his own, he had the whole Christian! And he'd have the temper tantrums in the ring and stuff. And I just feel like with whatever he's done, he's rolled with it. Always shown he's had a lot of charisma. Has a great moveset as well. Good storytelling in the ring. The only criticism I could probably say is obviously he's a little bit more on the smaller side. Again, compared to the modern wrestlers today, he's still probably bigger. Again, even in his advanced age now, he's still doing good work over in AEW and stuff. I think Christian is great. Probably did get an unfair run in WWE.
I thought it was kind of absurd because Christian deserved more time. Could have helped us. He could have worked with these guys that were less talented than him and make them look good. I think Vince's issue with Christian was Christian's physique. He's not a big guy, you know? He's always in great shape, but he's not a big guy. And Vince always had these hard-ons for big guys. Big teams more often than not. McMahon's preferences for how his talented look often got in the way of giving the fans what they wanted. And this was definitely the case with Christian. Even when Christian won the world title on 2 occasions in 2011, the reigns lasted 4 and 27 days respectively, which highlighted McMahon's dislike for the man himself. Number 4. Cody Rhodes. The American Nightmare Cody Rhodes finds himself firmly cemented as a face of WWE in 2025, but over a decade prior, things looked bleak for Rhodes in WWE. Rhodes had managed to connect with the fans as a babyface, and the reaction to him at the 2013 Money in the Bank event spoke volumes. Fans were rooting for Rhodes, and they were more than ready for Rhodes to take the next step in his career. This love for Rhodes continued as the Rhodes family storyline, which featured The Shield, received universal praise from fans. Rhodes was able to be spotlighted in the rivalry as if he was a megastar on the brink of greatness.
You know, I think Cody Rhodes' first run within the company was criminally underrated. Fair enough, he was a mid-card player, but he did get given lots of different roles and he ran with the ball every single time. You know, you had Legacy in the early part of his career. Legacy, wasn't it? Yeah, Legacy. And then you had Dashing Cody Rhodes, and then Undashing Cody Rhodes. You had the stuff that he did with his brother in the tag team and the family storyline and everything, and even Stardust. Like, Stardust was a crappy gimmick, but he still gave it everything he got, you know what I mean? But he obviously had to leave for greener pastures because he wasn't getting the main event push that he thought he deserved. Again, I think Cody was just guilty of being a slightly smaller guy. And then he's come back and he's done really well, deserves all his success. I would argue that the kind of babyface he's playing now is a little bit one-dimensional. It's hard for fans to stay behind that forever. You know, guys like Cody are better chasing, not having the belt, I think, in my opinion. But let's see how it goes. He's doing really, really well. But yeah, I think Triple H certainly respects and appreciates Cody more than what Vince did.
Now, main event singles run should have followed these hot few months for Rhodes. However, WWE ultimately decided to change his character completely. He would then become Stardust, which was basically another version of Goldust, and the fans instantly lost interest. Fans wanted Rhodes at the top of WWE, and they didn't want Rhodes to receive a new outlandish gimmick that had a short shelf life. Rhodes' work during this character would dip dramatically, and he justifiably asked for his WWE release in 2016. Number 3. Rob Van Dam. In 2002, Rob Van Dam was ranked the #1 pro wrestler in the world by Pro Wrestling Illustrated. This was completely accurate as RVD was so beloved by all demographics, and WWE really should have capitalized on this by attempting to make RVD the guy.
Yeah, well, before we continue with the story, and you probably know what's going to happen, I do agree that WWE took way too long to capitalize on RVD, because when he came in with the alliance and the invasion angle and everything, he was like massively over. Like, he was like, for a long time, you know, you had guys like Rock, Stone Cold and everything, Kurt Angle, but RVD was clearly for a time one of the most popular guys on the show, and they never ran with the ball on RVD until way later. I think at the ECW show was seen in 2005, 2006. And then he finally had his opportunity way too late, but still got it. And then he got in his own way with the whole drug thing. So, yeah, WWE did drop the ball and bury RVD. But when he finally did get the chance, he also blew it.
Unfortunately, this popularity wasn't enough for WWE to give RVD a shot, as although he was rumored to win the world title in 2002, he would ultimately be bested by Triple H at the Unforgiven pay-per-view. Additionally, by the time WWE rolled into WrestleMania 19, RVD couldn't even make the main card. It was claimed that he had backstage issues with Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and if this is true, then this petty issue prevented WWE from having a beloved organic babyface at the top of the card, which is exactly what they were crying out for at the time. Number 2, Rey Mysterio. It hasn't been uncommon for WWE management to give in to peer pressure as well as fan demand. When Rey Mysterio was pushed with a Royal Rumble win and subsequent world title victory, the fans were happy to see Mysterio in the role, but Vince McMahon just wasn't convinced. McMahon would have no doubt acknowledged that Mysterio was popular, yet Mysterio was the opposite of what McMahon liked out of a world champion. In one of the most petty and pathetic booking moves of all time, McMahon would commit to booking Mysterio's world title reign like it was an absolute joke, and this ruined any legitimacy that reign could have had.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think when it came to Rey Mysterio's world title run, they could have actually at least made him look like a legitimate champion, even if it was in an underdog position, and just to see how it went. But yeah, he never felt like the guy. And I would argue that Rey Mysterio was never the guy to carry the company in the first place. But they could have at least run the ball with him for a little while just to see how it goes properly. But yeah, they definitely didn't even make the effort with that run, unfortunately. It's a real shame. And then he won the WWE title and lost it to Cena the same night a few years later. This is crazy. I don't ever think like Rey Mysterio was ever supposed to be the permanent main event guy, but he's always going to be the guy that you can rely on to have the best match on the card. Maybe not so much today, but back in the day, and bring up and coming talent. Nothing wrong with that, man. Sometimes it's just a case of aces in their places, and he'll forever be a legend.
Thankfully for Mysterio, this bad booking didn't stop the fans rooting for him, as he was still on his way to reaching his iconic status. Interestingly, whilst McMahon no doubt resented Mysterio's popularity at first, over time the two were said to have developed a good relationship, with McMahon even giving Mysterio multiple other world title reigns over the subsequent years. And number 1, Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan catapulted into the hearts of fans around 2012 in WWE, and once Bryan had firmly resonated with the audience, there was no coming back. The fans had boldly decided that Bryan was their guy, and they were going to stop at nothing until WWE committed to making Bryan the #1 guy in the entire company.
Yeah, the problem with Daniel Bryan was definitely Vince McMahon being so arrogant. In this phase, and very dark phase, you know, in the 2010 era, especially the early 2010s, Vince was always trying to tell the fans, this is what you like, you don't know what you like, I'm going to tell you what you like. And to a point, you got to believe in the product that you're putting out. But Vince McMahon was, at this point, really insulting the intelligence of his audience, as well as trying to force feed them certain projects between, you know, Triple H, Roman Reigns, Batista, things like that. And it just completely backfired, and hence the Yes Movement. He finally had no choice but to listen, under duress, I guess.
According to various reports, Vince McMahon reportedly didn't fully embrace Bryan's insane popularity due to a combination of factors, including his unconventional style and Bryan not fitting the typical WWE top star mold. Unlike a lot of names on this list, this resentment from McMahon and no doubt others in WWE would gradually change over time. McMahon eventually realized what Bryan had to offer as a performer, and McMahon had gone from trying to cancel and diminish his popularity to changing WrestleMania plans in 2021 to incorporate the man himself. But there you have it, folks, 10 wrestlers WWE resented for getting popular on their own.
Thank you for watching the video, and thank you, What Culture. I mean, I love reacting to all sorts of different videos, and wrestling is a passion of mine, so thank you for providing this video. I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. If there's any other wrestlers you think have been buried in the past, guys, please let me know who you think should also be on the list. And yeah, we'll see you on the next video, guys. Appreciate ya.